Okay, today we slow down for a moment. In a world that moves faster than our minds can follow, where notifications arrive before our thoughts can form, we rarely pause to consider the only certainty that binds us all: mortality. It's the quiet truth behind every ambition, every love, every fear. And yet most of us spend our lives avoiding it, as if pretending could make it less real. But what if we could meet death not with dread, but with calm? What if, instead of running from it, we allowed its presence to teach us how to live, with gratitude, awareness, and courage? Welcome to Stoic Dhamma, where we explore the timeless insights of Stoic philosophy, merging ancient wisdom with the rhythm of modern life. In today's journey, we'll face one of humanity's oldest questions. How can we face mortality, not with fear, but with calm and inner strength? This is not about death itself, but about discovering the art of living fully in every fleeting breath we're given. There is something quietly powerful about standing still in a world that never stops. Every day we are surrounded by noise, breaking news, endless scrolling, the silent race for relevance. Yet beneath all of this movement, one truth waits patiently for our attention: everything ends. The Stoics did not fear this reality. They welcomed it as a teacher. To them, the awareness of death was not morbid. It was clarifying. It stripped away illusion and left only what mattered. From the crowded streets of Athens to the grand halls of Rome, Stoic philosophy arose amid chaos and change. Empires fell, wars raged, yet the Stoics taught one enduring truth: peace begins within, not by denying fragility, but by embracing it. The Stoics believed that mortality was not a tragedy to mourn, but a compass to guide life. When you realize that your days are finite, you begin to choose differently. You speak with more sincerity, listen more deeply, and love with less fear. What once seemed urgent becomes trivial. What once seemed ordinary becomes sacred. Marcus Aurelius, writing by lamplight as emperor and philosopher, reminded himself that life is a brief spark in the great unfolding of nature. He saw death not as punishment but as participation, a return to the same universal order that gave him life. In that understanding lies freedom. When you stop demanding permanence, you stop suffering from its absence. From here we turn to the heart of the Stoic vision. For them, death is not the opposite of life, it is part of it. Every ending carries the seed of renewal. The falling leaf enriches the soil. The setting sun prepares the dawn. To live well, the Stoics taught, is to live in harmony with this rhythm, to accept the cycle instead of resisting it. Now imagine a life lived with that clarity. Imagine waking each morning not fearing loss, but welcoming the chance to be present before it arrives. Each sunrise becomes an invitation, not a guarantee. You move through the day with awareness, knowing that every breath is a gift, and that gratitude itself becomes a form of courage. The modern world teaches us to fear endings, to preserve, extend, and immortalize ourselves through data, legacy, or fame. But the Stoics invite us to reverse that instinct. They teach that by facing mortality directly, we loosen the chains of fear. When you accept that time is slipping through your fingers, you learn to hold it more gently. There is a paradox here. The more we deny death, the more it controls us. Avoidance breeds anxiety. Acceptance brings serenity. Seneca once observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. To constantly fear what will come is to die many times before death itself. The Stoic way is simpler: to die only once and to live every moment before that with full presence. Think of the great philosophers walking through marble courtyards 2,000 years ago. They were not immune to pain, loss, or grief. They buried friends, lost loved ones, and faced exile and war. Yet, through it all, they sought not to escape pain, but to understand its nature. The Stoic practice of contemplating death, memento mori, was not about despair, but awakening. By remembering death, they remembered to live. This reflection may sound distant, yet it feels timeless. In every century, humanity returns to this question: how should we live knowing that we will die? The Stoics answered with simplicity: live according to nature, Align your will with what you cannot change, and focus on what lies within your control, your thoughts, your actions, your character. Everything else, wealth, status, even life itself, is borrowed. Now pause for a moment and let that idea sink in. What would change if you truly accepted that your time here is temporary? Would your priorities shift? Would you spend your energy differently or love with fewer conditions? This is the quiet revolution Stoicism offers, not the rejection of life's uncertainty, but its embrace. But there's another layer beneath this calm acceptance. The Stoics understood that the fear of death is rooted in attachment to possessions, to recognition, to identity. We cling to what defines us, and when those definitions fade, we panic. Yet when you release the illusion of permanence, something remarkable happens. What remains is peace. From this lens, the Stoic view of death becomes an art of living. It teaches that every loss, whether of time, people, or opportunities, is part of the same cosmic balance that sustains everything. To resist that balance is to fight the nature of existence itself. To accept it is to find harmony within it. In this way, Stoicism transforms mortality into a source of power. It reminds you that you cannot add years to your life, but you can add depth to your days. You cannot stop the sun from setting, but you can learn to watch it without sorrow. The calm acceptance of death is not resignation. It is mastery of self. The Stoics never sought immortality, they sought integrity. Virtue, for them, was the eternal within the mortal, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. When we live by these, we carve something timeless into a fleeting world. This philosophy endures because our struggles never change. We still chase what fades and fear what we can't control. The Stoics remind us, meaning isn't in lasting forever, but in living consciously now. So take a slow breath. Each inhale begins life anew. Each exhale releases it. This rhythm isn't to be feared. It's to be honored. That is why Stoic philosophy endures. It speaks to the human condition, teaching that calmness is not ignorance and acceptance is not surrender. Death does not lessen life. It gives it meaning. So ask yourself, if all you love will one day fade into silence, how will you live now? From here we journey back to the origins of this wisdom and to the thinkers who taught us how to live and how to die with grace. To understand the Stoic view of death, we must return to the ancient world, to the marble columns of Greece and the disciplined legions of Rome. There, philosophy was not confined to books or classrooms. It was a way of surviving, of breathing through chaos. In an age marked by wars, plagues, and shifting empires, the question of mortality was never abstract. It was woven into daily life, into every soldier's march and every citizen's prayer. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, began his journey not as a scholar, but as a shipwrecked merchant. Stranded and stripped of all possessions, he discovered a paradoxical truth. When everything external is taken, what remains is the inner self, the only thing truly ours. That realization became the seed of Stoic thought, a philosophy built not on luxury, but on loss. Centuries later, Rome adopted Stoicism as both armor and compass. Its greatest minds, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, lived amid turbulence and uncertainty. For them, philosophy was not a retreat from reality, but a discipline to endure it. Seneca wrote his letters during the final years of his life, knowing that the Emperor Nero could order his death at any moment. Epictetus, once a slave, found freedom not in chains broken, but in a mind unbound. And Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, carried his meditation journal into the battlefields, reminding himself each night that kings and beggars share the same fate. For these men, death was not an enemy to be conquered. It was a teacher, silent, impartial, and endlessly patient. It taught humility to the powerful, perspective to the anxious, and gratitude to the living. Through the Stoic lens, mortality revealed the sacredness of time. Every hour mattered because none were promised. From here, we turn to the philosophical foundation that shaped this view. In Stoicism, the universe is an ordered whole. a living system governed by logos, the rational principle that connects all things. To die, then, is not to disappear, but to return to that universal order, like a drop of water rejoining the sea. The Stoics believed that resisting this natural process creates suffering, while acceptance restores peace. Death, in their eyes, was simply nature taking its course. Marcus Aurelius captured this with haunting clarity when he wrote that at any moment, life could leave you. He did not say this to provoke fear, but awareness. To live with the constant reminder of impermanence was to awaken fully. When you accept that the curtain could fall at any time, you begin to act with integrity, speak with intention, and think with purity. Epictetus carried the same conviction, though his words were forged in hardship. He taught that our power lies not in controlling when or how we die, but in shaping how we live before that moment arrives. Life and death are not opposites, he suggested. They are the same movement, different stages of one continuous flow. This Stoic acceptance finds resonance across civilizations. In the teachings of the Buddha, there is the same quiet wisdom. Each moment we are born and die again. The person you were a second ago no longer exists. Each breath is a small resurrection. In the Hindu and Brahmanic traditions, death is not an end but a passage, a transformation guided by karma and consciousness. Even in Nietzsche's philosophy, the echo remains. Amor fati, the love of fate. To affirm existence, he argued, one must embrace it in its entirety, including its endings. Such parallels remind us that mortality is a universal mirror. Whether in Athens, Rome, or the Ganges Valley, humanity has always grappled with the same paradox: how to live fully while knowing that life will end. The Stoics were distinct not because they solved this mystery, but because they learned to live peacefully within it. Now imagine walking through the ruins of ancient Rome, the stones still carrying traces of those who once stood there. Empires have vanished, languages evolved, yet the same question lingers in the air. How do we live well knowing we will die? The Stoics answered through action, not abstraction. They practiced what they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, visualizing loss before it came so that when it arrived they could meet it calmly. This practice was not pessimism, but preparation. By contemplating mortality, they immunized the soul against despair. They learned to see every moment as borrowed, every friendship as a blessing, every breath as sacred. Death, when understood through this lens, ceased to be a thief and became a reminder. Nothing is truly ours except our choices. In the Stoic view, death was the great equalizer, humbling emperors and uplifting slaves alike. It erased wealth, fame, and power, leaving only virtue. Seneca taught that life's value lies not in its length, but in its depth. This clarity made Stoicism timeless, a guide to staying human in an inhuman world. Today, archaeology reveals fragments of ancient lives, carved stones, preserved letters, quiet meditations. These are not relics, but reminders. The ancients faced death with calm. Their wisdom still lives, waiting beneath our modern noise to be rediscovered. So as we stand here centuries later, the message of the Stoics still whispers: death is not the enemy of life. It is its completion, its counterpart, its silent guardian. To live as if death were near is not to live in fear, but to live awake, to taste each moment, to cherish each breath, and to shape each day with purpose. The origins of Stoic mortality wisdom are not buried in time. They are alive in every act of mindfulness, every moment of gratitude, every acceptance of change. When we look closely, we see that this philosophy does not belong to the ancients alone. It belongs to anyone who dares to meet life as it is, and to love it still. From here, we move beyond theory and into practice, into the living heart of Stoicism, where ideas become habits, and where facing mortality transforms not just how we think, but how we live. Philosophy has no real value if it lives only on paper. The Stoics believed that wisdom means nothing until it is embodied, lived, breathed, tested in the ordinary moments of every day. For them, philosophy was not a conversation for scholars. It was a discipline for the soul. Understanding death was not meant to make one morbid, but to make one alive. Fiercely, gratefully, consciously alive. Marcus Aurelius wrote meditations not for an audience, but as private reminders to live deliberately before the day's end. His reflections turned daily struggle into sacred practice, facing loss, change, and disappointment with calm resolve. In this lies Stoicism's quiet power, transforming reflection into ritual. In our modern world of noise and deadlines, its wisdom endures, not to escape chaos, but to move through it with clarity. 1. In work, acting without fear of loss. Every profession, no matter how humble or grand, is built on uncertainty. Projects fail, markets shift, opportunities vanish. The Stoics understood this long before the age of offices and algorithms. Their advice was simple: act with focus, not attachment. Seneca once said, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." The fear of failure often hurts more than failure itself. When we release the illusion of control over outcomes, we begin to act with freedom. You cannot decide whether success will come, but you can decide whether to give your best effort right now. This shift, from fear to focus, transforms not just productivity but peace of mind. When you stop fearing the end of a project or the judgment of others, your work becomes lighter, more meaningful. You begin to create not to prove your worth, but to express it. Imagine starting each task with the quiet reminder, if this were my last day, would I spend it worrying or doing something that matters? The answer is often a compass pointing back to presence. 2. In relationships, loving through impermanence. Every meeting carries the seed of farewell. The Stoics saw this not as a cause for sadness, but as a reason to love more deeply. Epictetus taught his students to look at their loved ones and remember, they are mortal, just as you are. Not to detach from them, but to cherish them fully, without illusion. In our modern world, we often take connection for granted. We assume there will be another dinner, another message, another morning. But what if there isn't? What if, like the Stoics, we met each interaction with gratitude, knowing it could be the last? This awareness changes how we listen, how we speak, how we forgive. Instead of arguing to win, we begin to understand. Instead of holding grudges, we let go faster. Instead of seeking perfection in others, we find beauty in their impermanence. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything we love will one day pass, and that this truth should make us love more fiercely, not less. When we hold others lightly, without possession or fear, we love them with a freedom that lasts beyond time. 3. In solitude, finding strength in stillness. Death also teaches us about solitude, the realization that, in the end, we face life's greatest transitions alone. For the Stoics, solitude was not loneliness. It was a return to the self. When the noise fades, when the distractions fall away, what remains is your own mind, the one companion you can never escape. In stillness, we learn gratitude. The mind, left undisturbed, begins to see clearly. That much of what we chase is unnecessary, that peace is not found in more, but in less. Modern Stoicism invites us to create small rituals of solitude, moments where we meet ourselves honestly. It could be as simple as a quiet morning walk, a few minutes of journaling, or sitting silently before the day begins. These are the moments where philosophy turns into practice, when reflection becomes transformation. Epictetus would say, if you can sit with yourself without fear, you have already mastered freedom. 4. Daily practices, cultivating the Stoic mind. Wisdom for the Stoics was built from habit. It was a craft honed through repetition. To live with serenity amid uncertainty, they designed simple but powerful practices, rituals that still resonate centuries later. Each morning, before you open your phone or face the world, pause and ask, if today were my last day, how would I live it? Do not rush the question, let it settle, then act upon it, not dramatically but with presence. Write down one thing you're grateful for. Something small, something real. The warmth of sunlight through the window. The sound of someone's laughter. The breath in your lungs. Gratitude shifts the mind from scarcity to abundance. It reminds us that we already have what matters. Write down one thing you're ready to release, a worry, resentment, or fear. Each act of letting go prepares you for life's final surrender. With practice, you carry less and move lighter. In the evening, reflect on your day with honesty, not judgment. Awareness, not perfection, nurtures wisdom. Through gratitude, release, and reflection, we find unshakable calm, a stillness beyond circumstance where true strength and freedom dwell. 5. The living philosophy. To live stoically is not to suppress emotion or deny beauty. It is to experience life fully, joy and sorrow, love and loss, while remembering that nothing is permanent. When you no longer cling, you can finally hold everything with open hands. In this way, Stoicism ceases to be an idea and becomes a rhythm, a way of breathing through the impermanence of all things. So tomorrow morning when the sun rises, remember, you do not own this day, it is a gift. Live it well, live it kindly, live it awake. And when the night comes, let it end with peace, knowing that nothing essential has been lost. That is the Stoic art of living, where mortality is not a shadow to fear, but a light that shows us how precious every moment truly is. To face death is to truly learn how to live. From Marcus Aurelius to modern thinkers like Irvin Yalom, this timeless truth endures. Mortality, once embraced, becomes a compass, guiding us toward what is real, fleeting, and worthy of our brief attention. The Stoics did not seek immortality, but clarity. They saw that the fear of death is really the fear of an unlived life. When that fear dissolves, gratitude and courage take root. Marcus Aurelius, writing amid war and plague, captured this wisdom. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. While you live, be good. His call was not to despair, but to awaken, to live with intention and grace. 1. The inner liberation. To accept death is to free yourself from the tyranny of time. Most of our anxiety comes from the illusion that we can control the length of our days. We rush, we hoard, we postpone joy for later, as if later were promised. But the Stoics remind us that every breath we take is both a beginning and an ending. Seneca once observed that life is long if we know how to use it. The tragedy is not that life ends, but that we waste so much of it fearing the end. When you stop measuring life by its length and start measuring it by its depth, you begin to see time differently, not as an enemy counting down, but as a companion walking beside you. Imagine for a moment, living each day as if you had already made peace with your mortality. Irritations fade, comparisons dissolve, and what truly matters emerges: sunlight, laughter, breath. This is freedom's first taste, not escape from death, but release from fearing it. 2. Death as a mirror of life. Modern psychology echoes the Stoics' insight. Irvin Yalom, the existential psychiatrist, wrote that confronting death can awaken us to a more authentic life. In his view, death anxiety hides beneath many of our daily struggles. Our need for control, our pursuit of achievement, our endless distractions. When we stop denying death, we also stop denying life. Marcus Aurelius practiced this awareness daily. He reminded himself that even the greatest emperors were forgotten, that fame and power fade like dust. What endures, he believed, is the character we cultivate, the integrity of our actions, the kindness we offer, the calm we nurture in ourselves. To remember that we will die is not to be morbid. It is to be honest. Death is the ultimate mirror. It strips away the noise and vanity of life, revealing the essence of what we are. When you stand before that mirror without flinching, you begin to understand what it means to live wisely. 3. The quiet rebellion of acceptance. In a world obsessed with youth, success, and permanence, accepting death becomes quiet rebellion. Amid distractions of productivity and perfection, one truth remains beneath the noise. Everything fades, everything passes, and that's what makes it precious. To live stoically is to stop resisting that truth and instead move in rhythm with it. The Stoic doesn't chase eternity, they honor the temporary. They know that nothing beautiful lasts forever, and that is precisely what makes it beautiful. Learning to face death in this noisy century is a radical act. It means saying no to the illusion of endless progress, and yes to the present moment. It means choosing depth over speed, connection over consumption, presence over distraction. You begin to live with intention. You start to say, "I love you," more often, not because it's dramatic, but because you mean it. You take time to watch the sunrise, not to post it, but to witness it. You stop trying to hold on to everything, and in that release, you discover peace. 4. The practice of letting go. The Stoics didn't avoid death, they practiced it. Memento mori reminded them to live with awareness. Each time you release a grudge, expectation, or fear, you quietly rehearse life's ultimate act of acceptance. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. It takes strength to see that control is an illusion. You cannot stop the seasons from changing, or the people you love from leaving, but you can meet each change with grace. Start with small acts of release. Declutter your space. Forgive someone who may never apologize. Speak truthfully, even if your voice trembles. Each act of letting go makes you lighter, more aligned with the rhythm of life. As Seneca wrote, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." The person who accepts death becomes untouchable, not because they have conquered fate, but because they no longer fear it. 5. Living as though you could leave life now. Here lies the Stoic paradox. Only by remembering death do we learn to cherish life. When you accept that each moment could be your last, everything sharpens. Words matter, choices deepen, and time becomes sacred. If life is finite, why waste it chasing approval or delaying your dreams? Instead, slow down, breathe, and live with full awareness of this fleeting miracle. To live as if you could leave at any moment is not recklessness, but awakening, a call to presence. It is the heart of Stoicism, to live so consciously, so completely, that when death arrives you can meet it not with fear, but with gratitude. 6. The gentle power of acceptance. The Stoics knew grief and loss as deeply as anyone. They loved, wept, and endured, yet carried a quiet wisdom. Everything is borrowed, and gratitude is the truest response. In accepting death, they found peace. In facing the inevitable, they discovered freedom. When we live with this awareness, death no longer feels like an end, but a return to stillness, to nature, to the rhythm of existence itself. To accept death is not to yield to it, but to embrace life fully. Every breath, every moment, every joy. In letting go, we finally learn to hold everything with love. Death, in the end, is not the final chapter, but a mirror that reflects how we have lived. When we learn to accept what cannot be avoided, fear dissolves, and in that quiet acceptance, we find freedom. Stoic philosophy never sought to shield us from loss. Instead, it invites us to love the present. Every breath, every heartbeat, every fragile, fleeting second reminds us that peace is not found in resisting life's impermanence, but in embracing it with open eyes and a steady heart. Each moment we live with awareness becomes a victory over fear. Each act of gratitude becomes an affirmation of life itself. So, if this reflection brought you even a moment of calm or clarity, take a breath and let that stillness stay with you. Like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Dhamma, where we continue our journey through ancient wisdom for the modern soul. And don't miss our next exploration. Discover the 5-minute Stoic habit that changes everything.